The blizzard had been raging for 72 hours across the frozen wastes of Kepler 442b, when the search party finally picked up Jessica's distress beacon. James Chen, leading the rescue team through the howling winds, felt his heart sink as the signal grew stronger. They were 15 kilometers from the research outpost, deep in territory no human had any business being in during storm season. "Commander Chen, we're getting a thermal reading," Lieutenant Saros announced, her antennae twitching beneath her environmental suit. The Zalari officer had seen many rescue operations in her 40 cycles, but something in her voice betrayed concern. "It's unusual." James pushed forward through the snowdrifts, his suit's servos whining against the resistance. The colony had lost contact with Dr. Jessica Winters 3 days ago, when she'd gone to investigate unusual seismic activity near the northern glaciers. Protocol dictated waiting out the storm, but James had overruled that decision. Humans, he'd learned long ago, had a terrible habit of surviving against impossible odds, but only if someone was foolish enough to look for them. The thermal signature resolved into a shape as they crested the ridge. What James saw made him stop dead in his tracks. Jessica's powered armor lay half buried in a snowbank, its emergency heat cells clearly depleted hours ago. The suit's chest plate had been deliberately opened, exposing the environmental layer to the deadly cold. According to his HUD, the exterior temperature was minus 73 degrees Celsius, with wind chill driving it even lower. No human could survive more than minutes in such conditions unprotected. "Medic forward," James barked, scrambling down the slope. His team followed, but he reached Jessica first. She was alive, barely. Her lips were blue, her skin pale as the snow around her, frost coating her eyelashes. The suit's biomonitors registered a core temperature of 29 degrees, hypothermia deep into the critical zone. By every metric, James knew Jessica Winters should have been dead, but that wasn't what made him stare. Nestled against Jessica's chest, protected by her opened armor and pressed against her hypothermic body, were 3 small forms, cubs, Karelian ice cubs, to be precise, an endangered species native to this frozen world. Their thick white fur rose and fell with steady breathing, and James's scanner showed their body temperatures were a healthy 38 degrees. "By the ancestors," whispered Saros, arriving beside him. "She gave them her heat cells." James understood immediately. Jessica had found these cubs, probably orphaned by the seismic activity she'd been investigating, and made a choice. The armor's heat cells could have kept her alive for days. Instead, she'd diverted every joule of power to keeping these small creatures warm, wrapping them against her own failing body, even as she slowly froze to death. "It's insane," Lieutenant Corvus muttered. The Brecken engineer's scales rippled with confusion. Why would she prioritize non-sentient animals over her own survival? They're not even her species. James carefully lifted one of the cubs, passing it to the medic. "Because she's human," he said quietly. "We do stupid, beautiful things like this." The medical team worked quickly, stabilizing Jessica's temperature while carefully extracting the cubs. James watched his old friend's face as the warming protocols began, remembering a conversation they'd had years ago over terrible station coffee. "You know what makes humans dangerous?" Jessica had said, grinning. "We pack-bonded with wolves." "With wolves, James. Apex predators, and we looked at them and said friend-shaped. We're a species of universal adoption protocols walking around in meat suits." James had laughed then. He wasn't laughing now as he watched the medics fight to save her life. The cubs mewed softly as they were examined, already searching for the warmth that had kept them alive. The youngest, barely larger than James's hand, kept trying to crawl back toward Jessica's still form. "Commander," the medic called out. "She's stabilizing. Core temp rising. Neural activity strong." The Zalari physician's voice held something like awe. Her body had entered a form of protective torpor. "I've read about this in human medical texts but never seen it." She intentionally lowered her own metabolism to reduce heat loss. "Did it work?" James demanded. "She should be dead." "But yes, somehow it worked long enough." The medic paused. "These cubs, they actually helped. Their body heat against her chest maintained circulation to her vital organs. She saved them, and in a way, they saved her too." Over the next hour, as the team prepared for extraction, James pieced together what had happened. The seismic activity had caused a glacier collapse, killing the cubs' mother and trapping them in the open. Jessica had found them, understood they wouldn't survive the storm, and made her choice. She'd turned her armor into an incubator, used her own fading body heat as a buffer, and somehow convinced her biology to hold on just long enough. Lieutenant Saros approached James as they loaded Jessica onto the medical transport. "Commander, may I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "In all my years serving alongside humans, I still don't understand. Dr. Winters is a brilliant scientist, one of only 3 humans in the sector qualified in xenoseismology. She has contributed more to our understanding of planetary formation than any researcher in a generation, and she risked all of that, her life, her work, for 3 animals that cannot thank her, cannot repay her, cannot even comprehend what she did." James looked at the cubs, now warm and sleeping in specialized carriers, then at Jessica's frost-damaged but living face. "That's exactly why she did it, Lieutenant. Because they couldn't ask. Because they couldn't understand. Because she was the only one there who could help." He smiled slightly. "Humans have a saying, we are all we have between the dark and the light." Jessica saw creatures suffering and decided she would be their light, even if it cost her everything. "It nearly cost her everything," Saros said softly. "Nearly," James agreed. "But humans are ridiculously hard to kill when we've decided something needs protecting." 3 weeks later, Jessica woke in the colony's medical bay, all fingers and toes miraculously intact. The first thing she asked about were the cubs. When James told her they were healthy and had been placed with a wildlife rehabilitation center, she smiled and went back to sleep. The colony council later debated whether to commend or reprimand her for the incident. The Galactic Species Coalition sent an observer who spent an hour reviewing the case before making a note in his report. "Recommend increased caution when deploying with human personnel. They will attempt to save anything they perceive as helpless, regardless of personal risk. This trait, while tactically inadvisable, appears to be species-wide and incurable." James kept that report, right next to a photo of Jessica, fully recovered, bottle-feeding 3 growing Chiralian cubs who would never know the warmth that had saved them, came from a half-frozen human who decided they mattered more than her own survival. That was humanity. That was Jessica. That was why, across 1,000 worlds, other species whispered with a mixture of exasperation and wonder about the crazy apes who couldn't stop adopting things.